Hi, everybody. Craig Shacklett here from URComped, and we've got a very special Compt travel interview today with Dean Barnett. He is the Vice President of Sales at Galaxy Gaming. Galaxy Gaming is a provider of intellectual property related table games. Dean will do a much better job explaining it than I will, but it's going to be very fun. We're going to talk a lot about innovation in the casino industry, especially around table games. And yeah, why don't we start there? First of all, thank you for being here, Dean.
Hi, Craig. It's nice to be here. Thank you.
All right, you're welcome. So I always like hearing people's origin stories because getting in the casino business is a unique industry and everyone has a different path to get into it. So tell us about your path. How did you get into the casino business?
Well, I thought I'd be there for 5 minutes. When I was in college, I was a fairly decent athlete, played college football at a Division I level, and I played a little bit in the pros. So I played with Denver for a bit. If you Google me, you'll see very little, but I was there for about 2 seasons. But that's how I got into the business. I had injuries, and then I needed some place to work at night and pay the bills while I was chasing my dream. So then I subsequently have 2 artificial knees. I banged up a little bit. So I ended up spending some time, about 10 years in operations, because the football thing didn't quite work out. And then I ran into a gentleman on the supply side that changed my life. So that's how I got into it.
Well, let's back up. What position were you in football?
I played tight end with the UNLV Rebels, and then a little bit a tight end with the Denver Broncos. So I'm an older gentleman. I was a rookie with John Elway, so that was quite fun.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So
Yeah.
it's hard to tell. We're recording this via Skype, but so I take it you're a big gentleman. You're
Not anymore.
not anymore.
I need to replace the shoulder too. Kind of hard to bang weights around anymore. But I guess the frame is still there, but the muscles are long gone.
So you went to UNLV. So I take it you made some connections there. What was the first casino you worked at?
My first job was actually at the Four Queens in downtown Las Vegas on swing shift. So I could have my days open.
Wow. Okay. So you worked as an operator with a property for a while, and then tell us about that transition. How you mentioned there's somebody that really changed your life, but yeah, what were you doing, and what was that opportunity that pulled you from the property to the vendor side?
Well, once I realized that, I was going to not be a professional athlete, I decided I better learn everything I could in where I was at. So as you know, there's a lot of different types of games. I started off, dealing roulette and blackjack, and learned craps and Bach. I got poker, so I was a dealer for a while. Then I put on a suit, became a supervisor, and was, heading upwards slowly, but I didn't necessarily want to just be on the floor all the time. So I started looking around for other opportunities, and what happened was the gentleman who came up with the idea of a card shuffler walked into my life one day. And my boss knew I was looking for projects to kind of spice up my days, keep things interesting. And he asked me to handle that project. He was trying to get approval in Nevada for, this card shuffler he'd made. So I ran the project for Bally's. Now I'm on Bally's in Las Vegas on the Strip. And I ran the project, and he had the wrong shuffler, the wrong model for that time. It was a single deck machine, could only shuffle 1 deck of cards, and then it pushed them down into a shoe, which, as you know, that's usually when you've got a blackjack game with multiple decks. And back in those days, there weren't all these specialty poker games like we have now. So there really was no application per se, but it was a fabulous idea. Especially if they could learn to shuffle more cards. So I hounded that guy for a year, and he didn't have any money, and he finally hired me about a year later. The company's name was Shufflemaster. That later was sold to Bally, and now is currently merged with Scientific Games, a huge company. So that's how I got out of operations.
Well, so I love that. So you recognize, so Bally's at the time, there's a lot to unpack there. So Bally's, now of course Bally's is, a lot of people see Bally's on their slot machines. And so back then, was Bally's a technology provider as well as owner of a casino on the strip? Or like, you get my question is,
Yeah.
back then, was it there's a Bally's technology arm as well as they owned a property? Or and that's why you guys got a chance to look at this new piece of technology? Or was it just Bally's property was testing this out and to see if they might use it, just like Caesar's Palace would?
Yeah, there was a common name there, Bally. There were two different companies. The Bally's I worked for is the casino on Las Vegas Boulevard, a casino operator, and then later there was a Bally, actually I think a gym company also. But the other Bally that later bought this company I helped start was a slot manufacturer. So coincidental with the names, but two different companies, two different business models.
Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. So you saw this at the time, Bally's as a property was like, you know what, this doesn't work here. We need a shuffler for multiple decks. The technology that this gentleman had wasn't going to work, but you saw the potential there. So you said you kept hounding him for a year. And then when he finally relented and let you in, was it, what were you doing for him then? Were you just selling? Were you advising him on how to make it actually more marketable to a casino, or what was that like?
Well, as you look back in life, the football thing didn't work out, but I spent a lot of years in the casino pits, as a dealer, as a supervisor, as a shift manager, and I felt that I understood the business at this time after 10 years, whereas this gentleman, brilliant idea guy, but he wasn't a casino guy. I knew a few people back then, not a lot, because I was locked into my property and I didn't know people all over the place, but I did know a few. So I offered to kind of be the operations guy because I'm not an engineer. So he contracted an engineer to build these things. And then there was another gentleman, his name is Bill O'Hara. He became my dear friend and mentor. But Bill and I really started Shufflemaster as far as the operations part of it in Las Vegas at his house, in his dining room table, and then in the garage. And then later, which I told you, Valley bought Shufflemaster for $1.3 billion. It was just a Cinderella story of which I was only a small piece of, but it was a fun ride.
Wow. So what happened? What was the process like from something that just couldn't be sold, a one deck shuffler, to how long did it take to actually get a product that was ready to go? And then what was that trajectory like when you finally walk us through, like finally getting it right, and then how quickly were you able to sell it to casinos around the country?
Yeah, that's a funny story. It's a great question. Today you and I are talking, on our computers to one another, like you're across the table from me. In those days, we didn't have these kind of tools, so I would have to physically put a card shuffler into a big case, drag it somewhere, go to a vice president's office, basically knock everything off his desk, put it on the table, plug it in, and run some cards through it and say, this is a card shuffler, and this is why it'll help you. It'll add security to your table because you take the human element out of it, and you'll take away essentially the shuffle time. So you're going to pick up maybe 15 to 20% more productivity, more hands dealt. And even players, they don't necessarily like watching a dealer shuffle. They want to play cards. So so that was the difficult part of making that transition into casinos, but it was also a magical part because the guy who invented the idea, it was just the coolest mechanism to take a deck of cards, split them in half, have this little, it's called a mandrel, but this little thing that came up just as if they were human thumbs, and just split them, push them together. that for the first time, it was really, we had a lot of good laughs. Like, get out of here. Is that really doing that? And I'm like, yeah. So it was fun, hard but fun.
And was it a snowball effect? Because like you said, it was pre-internet. It wasn't like things could catch fire like they do now. But was it somewhere you got it into one casino and then all of a sudden other people were seeing it, and then you're starting to take inbound calls? Or what was like? How quickly did it catch fire once you got it into a few properties?
It took years, and it varied depending on the model that we had. So I mentioned that I first saw a single deck machine, and then there was a double deck machine, and then there was a 6-deck machine, and all of those had different applications. And then we modified the single deck machine so it dealt poker hands like people are familiar with now, that kicked out 5 cards at a time or 7 cards or 3 cards or whatever. So each of those models took a little time in and of themselves to get launched. But probably the most satisfying part I had of that whole journey was it did become an industry standard, within a certain amount of time. And I still had to lug the machines around the world, really, to show it to people. But after a while, people knew that they worked. Of course, that was the other issue. They didn't work very well in the beginning. But once they started working well and players accepted them, then that changed the industry.
We deal with URComped. We deal with players mostly, and obviously there's a lot of players are superstitious no matter what game they're playing or slots or shuffling, and we're like, oh, I want hand shuffle because those machines are rigged. What do you say to them that think the machines are rigged?
Well, that was a real issue. What you say is completely accurate. There's probably still people out there that feel that way, and it was a problem. The truth of the matter is everything in gaming, as far as casino operations, suppliers, slot machines, card shufflers, even the intellectual property that we do now, those have to go through serious testing. There's a company called GLI, Gaming Laboratories International. They verify all the code, all the hardware. They test this stuff, in and out. It's a very industry. So, all those products went through that test and they passed that test. And it took a little while, but players eventually, I think, decided I'd rather make a bet than sit here watching somebody shuffle cards. And the casinos aren't going to cheat. There's no way they're going to cheat. Mathematics are what they are, and there's always a house advantage, as I'm sure everybody knows. There's really no need to cheat. They're gonna make a little bit over the long haul.
So you talked about tweaking the engineering at the beginning. It didn't work so well, and then obviously it got better. It became industry standard. It spread. What about the business model side? When you guys first launched it, did you have one approach, like we're going to sell, X dollars per machine, and then maybe switch over time to a different model that helped it sell faster? Or tell us about that piece.
Like for single deck games, we had, back in those days, we had a machine that shuffled a whole single deck and just kind of presented it to the dealer, and so we marketed that because that's what we had, and that was still a vast improvement over, a minute of shuffling a single deck or thereabouts. And then as technology improved and we built better models that could deliver packets of cards, then we would replace, those earlier models with this newer model. And eventually we'd have to obsolete some of the parts and all that, just like, any manufacturer would. But in each case, what we were providing, I think, provided a better experience for the players. As we got better and better, I think their experience was better too.
And when you were selling it initially, was it always was it a kind of a lease model, or were they buying this piece of equipment? What was kind of the business side of it? How are those deals structured?
In those days, there was a monthly license for the equipment, and later when that company got into game content, the same thing. There would be a monthly license fee for the equipment for the games. Here at Galaxy Gaming, we do the same thing. We have a recurring revenue model. We do have some long-term agreements, but they're generally very short-term. Here at Galaxy, we're acutely aware that a game that is not, enjoyed by and not making any money for the casino can't stay on that floor very long. So we have no desire to, try to, force them into keeping something that's not working. So we'll work very actively as a consultant and try to provide something that is more interesting and still turns a profit for the casino.
Yeah, let's get into Galaxy Gaming. I asked you enough about Shufflemaster, but I think it's just fascinating because Shufflemaster is a brand that anyone that's ever played a table game has seen automatic shuffler, and it's just so interesting that you were there, really helping to get it started, which is awesome. So, but let's transition to Galaxy Gaming today. Tell us about Galaxy Gaming. What do you guys offer?
Well, Galaxy Gaming does not do some of those things that that company does. Now Scientific Games. We don't do some of the utility products or shufflers, but we are, I guess you'd probably say, the largest independent provider of blackjack and dice side bets, poker derivatives, hold'em type games, 3-card poker games, things like that, and also the electronics, the progressive platform itself. That's what we do. We have people on board that are really table game experts that love table games. We don't get into slots. There's others that do a very good job at that, and we're focused on the table game side of it.
So it sounds like a great business because now you don't even have the cost of equipment, right? You just come up with amazing games and then you sell them into the casinos. So awesome. And then why don't you tell us a little bit about the difference between, you mentioned specialty games and you mentioned side bets. Like what's the difference between those two?
What allows a business model like ours to survive and thrive is on some of these games you can, in early days, have patents issued, where you come up with something interesting, you protect it, you license it. Then there's other things in the marketplace that are public domain, like blackjack, been out there forever, baccarat, roulette, things like that have been out there forever that nobody can charge for. Those are in the public domain. So for those types of games, we try to make them more interesting. Blackjack, for instance, can be a little, some people will call it boring because you're getting paid even money, essentially. You have to know a strategy. There's some things about blackjack that are really fun, but there's also, no way to catch a big score. So we'll throw some side bets on to a public domain game like craps, like blackjack, like roulette, and try to make the game a little more interesting, provide the player a different experience other than something they're used to. So that's what I would classify as a side bet. Specialty game is something like usually a poker derivative is what you'd be familiar with, most people, where you've got like a hold'em game with some interesting dealing procedures and side bets and maybe even some progressives on top. Those would be poker derivatives or specialty games is kind of what we refer to them as. And so those are the two game content portions of the business that we deal with, side bets and premium games, and then the electronics come on top of those.
So what are some of the innovations you're seeing? Like where do you see the table game, I guess, industry headed from an innovation perspective?
Well, it's really funny, years and years ago, books were written about blackjack on how to get just the tiniest player advantage if you were a good counter, You could track those cards. There was all kinds of books written about it. People made a lot of money. And over time, players have shown that they're willing to place a wager on a little circle on a layout if there's a chance of catching, a little bit bigger score. So that has really changed over the years. Rather than just a standard blackjack table with a circle or a betting spot and that's it. Now you've got blackjack tables with multiple side bets on there. One of the most popular in the world is 21 plus 3. That's a Galaxy game. It's just a 3-card poker side bet before you finish the blackjack round. But it's a way to pick up a few, 30 to 1 or 20 to 1, something besides even money. So it just kind of adds a little spice. And then, so that's how it evolved, just a bet spot for the game and then one side bet. And now you see 2 side bets. Now you see sometimes 3 side bets all on the felt. And then even on top of that, you might see some electronics where people are now chasing tens of thousands of dollars on a progressive. So that's just really how things have changed over the years. And it's just a different world now.
So you mentioned earlier about public domain and that craps, blackjack, some of the games that are just obvious are public domain now. So if a casino is running a blackjack table, it doesn't have any side bets, they essentially don't have to pay really anybody to run that game. But if it's a specialty game, it could be a Galaxy game with 21 plus 3. If they're running one of those games that have a little spice to it, something different, they would pay a monthly fee per table, or how do those deals work?
Multiple ways. In years past, it was per table. The casinos would generally, they're businessmen. They're not going to want to add costs to their bottom line for tables they may not open very often. In the casino, there's these primary pits that are open most of the time, and then there's these secondary pits, tables that are last to open, first to close, that might only be open for a few hours, a weekend, per weekend. So they'll usually happily pay for something that's open all the time to get their money's worth. But over the years, we've also begun doing, I think Galaxy was the first to realize we didn't like that those secondary pits might not offer the game the players are looking for. So we started doing some different pricing mechanisms where we would provide a site license. So for the entire site, we'll charge you a fee, and then you can put it everywhere. Because we don't want to be the reason that the players were not satisfied when they walked in on a Friday night and Saturday night and they couldn't get into the main pit, so they had to go over here, but the game wasn't there. So we've tried to make that more available.
Smart. So you make it so that lowers the barrier to add another table, because you just say, hey, pay this per month, and you can put on all the tables. You put on one table, it's up to you, but you're not going to be the barrier.
Yeah, exactly.
So these new games, I was looking at your website, you have a lot of different games, a lot of different side bets. Do you develop them internally? Are you out scouting for good ideas and then licensing them? How does that work?
Yeah, both. So as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the people on our staff are from the casino industry, either in operations at some level, dealers, floor people, supervisors. Others have been executives in other manufacturing companies. So we actively seek interesting ideas from outside our walls, but we also get together on a very regular basis to try to brainstorm and come up with some of our own ideas internally. So how it is when you're busy running the business. It's sometimes difficult to work on the business that you're supposed to be experts in. So we realize we're going to get busy, and we are busy, and we travel. Even with technology, it does require a lot of travel around the world. So we try to take advantage of the bright minds that come to us, and then do it ourselves as well.
So obviously with the pandemic, G2E was canceled. I imagine there's other gaming conferences that you guys would normally be at that were canceled. So what have you been doing? How have you adjusted from a sales perspective in an age where travel is a little more difficult?
Well, that's a beautiful question, right? I mean, the casinos, almost every one of them around the entire globe shut down for a time. So we weren't doing any travel. We weren't really doing any of these kind of calls, trying to present new products online. I mean, they were closed. Most people were, or many people were furloughed, and there was nobody to talk to about anything. There was nothing going on. As things change, we do a lot of this type of selling, if you will, and we do that. We're doing it at the company level. We'll be doing one on December 8th of this next month, where we're going to be unveiling. We'll have our product and engineering team show our new progressive platform. We'll have the gentleman in charge of the new game development, whether internally or externally. He's going to present new games that we'll be bringing to market. So we're doing a lot of webcasting, but still, now that you can travel and you can wear your mask and you can be safe, we're doing that. So at least the sales department is still out and about doing what they normally do.
Now, we talked about earlier in the interview about your start helping to take Shufflemaster nationwide, and obviously you've had a long, successful sales career. What kind of advice do you have for people maybe entering in the business from the vendor side in the casino business, to have the kind of success? No one, some of what you've done is just being in the right place, right time, and you recognized an opportunity, pursued it, and you said you dogged that guy for a year to get in, and obviously made the most out of that opportunity. But yeah, I made that question longer than it needed to be. But what kind of advice would you give to somebody coming into casino sales?
It's probably a little biased that I feel that I've been more successful because I walked the walk, for 10 years or so in the casinos. I dealt the cards, I shuffled the cards, I managed the staff, I reported to my boss about win-loss. I understand that environment still very well to this day, and that was an extraordinary help for me when I made the jump to the other side, to the dark side. And then as a manager, I've hired salespeople who were qualified sales, very good professionals, and I've hired, gaming professionals. And what has been most successful is teaching a gaming professional how to operate outside of a casino space. That's with systems you have to, understand, and opportunities and business levels and inventory and billing and, all these CRM systems. You have to learn how to use that. You have to learn how to manage your time, which is difficult from a casino perspective because they essentially, kind of clock in and clock out, and they got to go here and they got to go there. So there's a learning curve of how to manage your time and how to strategize and how to be successful. But the problem from the other side of a real professional coming in, they just never quite got the language of the casino business, and every business is unique. Ours is probably not, and I know it's not, certainly, extremely difficult, but it's very helpful to understand the language and the priorities of the guys managing the casino. So experience, to answer your question, sorry, my answer was too long too. I prefer casino experience because I think it would be helpful in the long run, and then from there on, it's just work real hard and do what your mama told you when she raised you, and that is, do what you say you're going to do, be honorable, be trustworthy, never tell anybody something's great when it's not, have their best interests at heart, and you'll be successful.
Great advice. Great advice. Now, you've obviously been successful. Galaxy Games are in a lot of different places. Now, URComped, we send players all over, but a lot of our business is sending players to cruise ships, which, I'm sorry, no one can play them right now, but what kind of games, or which of your games can be found on cruise ships?
Well, we have certain lines that we're real strong with and others that our competitors do better with, but certainly you'll find our whole product line on the vessels that do carry Galaxy products. You know, the entire Carnival, Princess. You know, that whole fleet of 100 vessels or so. Royal Caribbean, Celebrity. You know, you'll see our side bets on blackjack tables and those latter two. On the Carnival, you know, group, you'll see all the premium games, the poker derivatives, the dice. You'll see everything. So, you know, there's quite a lot of Galaxy product on cruise ships.
Now, while the ships are not sailing, what's a way that players can try out all the different Galaxy games and side bets?
Yes, we're in the middle of a nice website rebuild, but you can still go to galaxygaming.com, and there's currently a couple little things you could click. Just click I'm a player, and then you'll see another link you can follow to play in our games. And then you can play most of the poker derivatives, the good one. Actually, all of them are on there. There's really top 5 or 6 that I would recommend a casino operator. But you can play those, and there's a few side bets you can play as well. Lucky Ladies, that's what started our company. You're just hoping your first 2 cards are a 20 when you play blackjack. 21 plus 3 is on there. So galaxygaming.com, you know, play our games. You can do that.
And if you do play them and you like any of them, I would recommend, Dean's not telling me to say this, but I'd say go to the casino's Facebook page, put on their, go in that chat and tell them you tried the game out and you liked it. That will get to the appropriate people. Just trust me. So Dean, anything that we didn't cover today that you think would be interesting or I should have asked you?
Well, for your players, you know, you cannot find progressives everywhere. So maybe your suggestion you just made about going to Facebook pages and telling people what they like, you know, we think, and it's part of our business model, of course, too. But as I said earlier, the slope of the business has changed. Players are looking for, you know, bet a little, win a lot kind of opportunities. So if they're unsatisfied with just the felt versions, ask them a progressive. And there's many options there as well.
Excellent. Well, Dean, this was super interesting. I really appreciate you carving out some time, and let's do it again soon.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Dean.